Can you hear us? And
Hola.
Tim?
And I don't even have to use my desktop to send these activities or pathways to Mahler. Upon setting them up, I can open the app on my phone or tablet, go to activities or pathways.
Somebody watching TV while they're on board?
Giving us instructions.
We're getting instructions on something.
Morning, Kathy. How are you? Or afternoon, whichever it is.
Good. Great to see everyone.
Hi, Kathy.
Pam, nice to see you.
Thank you.
Hello, Michael.
Hey.
So while we're waiting, if you want to put where you're calling in from in the chat so we can see who's here with us today, that would be great.
All right, so far we have Seattle is the furthest away, right?
Furthest from where? Not from Seattle.
Right.
No, but it's the furthest from where I'm sitting, from the East Coast.
We have Seattle, Florida, Massachusetts, and
Colorado.
Wisconsin. So we're at all four corners at this point. We need Hawaii. Where's Hawaii? And yeah.
I used to
Maybe
get
they're in
Alaska.
bed.
Houston,
And plenty in the middle.
yeah, and lots in the middle.
From two places.
Mhm.
And a Canadian from Houston.
Yeah, that's an interesting combo.
Another combination.
There's Michelle.
Hi,
How are
New
you?
York City, too. A couple of New York cities. Okay.
nice to see you.
Welcome.
Thanks.
What do you think? We're 3 minutes in. We'll let the other folks in as they come, and might as well get ourselves started today. There's a lot to cover.
Yes.
So good morning and good afternoon and welcome everyone. My name is Susan Collins. I'm a member of the Leadership Council of the Encore Network. We're obviously very excited to have you all here today for our program. While we are settling in and watching for the last few folks to join us, I wanted to remind you that we are recording this event and we will send you the link after the program. But if you prefer not to be on camera, just turn your video off. I also want to remind you, as many of you probably already know, that as members of the Encore Network, you have full access to network benefits such as discounts at our monthly programs, which are often free to members like today's, participation in our affinity groups, and an array of promotional opportunities, which include placement of your programs and events on the Encore Network website and in our newsletters, your name, logo, and a description of your program on the website, and of course, social media members when we can. Depending on your membership level, you may be also able to offer membership to others in your organization so they too can take advantage of membership benefits. As you know, our mission here at the Encore Network is to create community, stimulate learning, and inspire action. So together, members will transform the Encore stage of life. Today, it's our pleasure to introduce our program presenters, Encore Network members Anne Avergun and Elizabeth Mahler. So ladies, go ahead and take it away.
Hi there, this is Elizabeth Mahler, and I want to welcome you all. My main focus today is going to be monitoring the chat, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you on the chat. At some point, you'll be asked to provide some information, which we'll stop and take a look at. And other times, if you have questions, which we do encourage, we'll try to stop when we can, but we will have a Q&A session at the end, so I'll be collecting questions and we'll work with them at the Q&A session, or else we'll be glad to answer them and send it out with the recording. So as Susan said, this will be recorded and you'll have an opportunity to get that recording. So I'm going to turn it over to Amy at this point.
Okay, hello, everybody. I'm Amy Avergun, and I am a longtime volunteer with the Encore Boston Network, and I recently joined the Encore Network. And what I do professionally is I develop and deliver all kinds of workshops, and including doing some of those for the Encore Boston Network, which is what prompted Doug Dixon, who many of you know, to ask me if I would share what Doug likes to call my brain-friendly design techniques with all of you. So I am very happy to be doing that. And this is a topic that I enjoy, and I hope you will too. And I hope you'll be able to take away some great tips for the webinars that you want to do. So to get started, we are going to watch a video. And I'm not going to say anything else. I'm just going to show it.
Back in New York, I am the head of development for a nonprofit called Robin Hood. When I'm not fighting poverty, I'm fighting fire. Fire seemed pretty early to get in on any action. I remember my first fire. I was the second volunteer on the scene, so there was a pretty good chance I was going to get in. Still, it was a real foot race against the other volunteers to get to the captain in charge to find out what our assignments would be. When I found the captain, he was having a very engaging conversation with the homeowner, who was surely having one of the worst days of her life. Here it was, the middle of the night. She was standing outside in the pouring rain, under an umbrella, in her pajamas, barefoot, while her house was in flames. The other volunteer who had arrived just before me, let's call him Lex Luthor, got to the captain first and was asked to go inside and save the homeowner's dog. The dog. Oh, I was stunned with jealousy. Here was some lawyer or money manager who for the rest of his life gets to tell people that he went into a burning building to save a living creature, just because he beat me by 5 seconds. Well, I was next. The captain waved me over. Said, Bezos, I need you to go into the house. I need you to go upstairs, past the fire, and I need you to get this woman a pair of shoes. I swear. So, not exactly what I was hoping for, but off I went. Up the stairs, down the hall, past the real firefighters who were pretty much done putting out the fire at this point, into the master bedroom to get a pair of shoes. Now, I know what you're thinking, but I'm no hero. I carried my payload back downstairs where I met my nemesis and the precious dog by the front door. We took our treasures outside to the homeowner where, not surprisingly, his received much more attention than did mine. A few weeks later, the department received a letter from the homeowner thanking us for the valiant effort displayed in saving her home. The act of kindness she noted above all others, someone had even gotten her a pair of shoes. You know, in both my vocation at Robin Hood and my avocation as a volunteer firefighter, I am witness to acts of generosity and kindness on a monumental scale. But I'm also witness to acts of grace and courage on an individual basis. And you know what I've learned? They all matter. So as I look around this room at people who either have achieved or are on their way to achieving remarkable levels of success, I would offer this reminder. Don't wait. Don't wait till you make your first million to make a difference in somebody's life. If you have something to give it now. Serve food at a soup kitchen, clean up a neighborhood park, Be a mentor. Not every day is going to offer us a chance to save somebody's life, but every day offers us an opportunity to affect one. So get in the game, save the shoes. Thank you.
So here's my question, and you can just put this right in the chat. Did you like this video? Yes or no? Just kind of, we're just friends here. Go ahead. How many of you liked it? All right, we have a lot of yeses. We have a lot of yeses. Great, great. All right, so here's my the next thing. I'm really glad that you liked it. At the same time, you're probably wondering why the heck we started the webinar with this video. So here's what I want you to do. Take a minute and think about that. Why do you think we did that? What were we trying to accomplish by doing that? Just sort of throw in the chat, or if you want, you can unmute yourself and just let us know what you're thinking. Okay, trying to demonstrate a compelling instead of a boring start, getting our attention, showing the power of a story. Start with a story that makes us curious, making a connection to engage our attention and build anticipation, an on-point icebreaker, that you do have to do something big, that you don't have to do something big to make a difference, to engage our attention and build anticipation. So you nailed it. That was exactly why we did this. But here's the headline on all of this, okay? The headline is that what we were doing was starting what I like to call Operation Brain Space. And what the heck do I mean by that? Operation Brain Space is the battle to get people's attention, to keep people's attention, and move people to action. So those of us who develop webinars or workshops, we always think we have this wonderfully compelling body of content, and we do. But the reality is that whenever we do a webinar, we're up against some pretty stiff competition for people's attention and for space in their brains, and especially in their long-term memory. So I want to just do a quick check right now and see how we're doing, just even after a couple of minutes, for the battle of your brain space. So here's what I want you to do. What messages have you received already in this webinar? And you can either put those in the chat, or we did send you in the handouts some pages to take notes. So if you go to page 2, you can kind of see that. So I'm just curious.
Hello?
Yes.
Both documents, honey? There's 2 of them.
Yes. About.
Okay.
Okay. So just put in,
Yeah,
what messages have you gotten already, just from a couple of minutes of this workshop? Great. Tell a story, use the chat for engagement, key to strike an emotional chord, use the chat, all of these kinds of things. Yes, yes. So those are some very good starting messages. But here's the challenge. And I'm just going to close my, here's the challenge. It's one thing to get people's attention. It's another thing to keep things in their brains. So research says that one thing that helps, I think we need people to be muting. Can everybody mute themselves, please? Great, thank you. So research says that one thing that helps is making handwritten notes. And that works better for the long-term memory than just typing something. So that was why we sent you these handouts. But basically, that just gets us a start, because the truth is that the video and the messages you recorded in the chat was just a way to get you into working memory, okay? And as you can see, things stay in our working memory about, if we're lucky, 20 minutes. The goal is to get over here to long-term memory. And that's pretty challenging, because there is a lot of competition for things that get into our long-term memory. So one thing that we're going to use to help is repetition. And I know this seems like a very simple tool, but it's not the only tool. It's just one tool that I want to mention, because it really makes a difference in getting people to remember things. So, and if you're not a fan of repetition, I want you to try this out. So I'm going to show these, and quickly, I want you to answer these. You can call them out, say them in your head, whatever. 9 times 5, what is it? 4 times 6, what is it? 8 times 3. So I'm going to guess that just about everybody here answered all of those with no thought. Why? Because they were drilled into us in day after day in grade school. Our teachers had years for that to happen, to basically operate on a long-term memory so that we can just do those by rote. But as webinar presenters, we have what? 60 to 120 minutes. So we need to be pretty smart about the tools that we use, the tools we have at our disposal to efficiently get into the hearts and minds of our audience. In this way, we are probably more like brain and heart surgeons than we are grade school teachers. We need to be savvy about the tools that we use. But I don't want you to think that this is entirely cold-blooded, that we're in the operating room. The approach we're going to take is that we're going to take a kind and gentle approach to Operation Brain Space. So we're going to cover a whole bunch of tools. We've already looked at one, repetition. And here's what I want to do right now. Here's the list of the tools that we're going to cover. But I want to get a sense of which of these you're already making a conscious effort to use when you do your webinars or workshops. So Elizabeth, do you want to walk us through how we're going to use this as a poll?
Yes. So what I'd like everybody to do, I'm going to give you some instructions here so you can participate in this poll, is go up to the top of your screen where you see the green horizontal line that says you are viewing Amy Avergun's screen. Hopefully it says that. Next to that is a black line that says view options. So click view options and go all the way down to almost the bottom where it says annotate and click there. Once you've done that, go to the word stamp, which is 1, 2, 3, the fourth one from the left, and pick a stamp. And then once you've selected a stamp, you can go down there and put it anywhere you want to put it near where you want it to go. So hopefully that helped you, and it looks like it's working.
Yes. So just, we're curious, what are people already doing? Got a lot of stars here. That is great.
Stars and hearts, those are good choices.
Oh yeah, I like the hearts and X's and the checks. Perfect. All right. So it looks like people are already well on your way to using a variety of these. And hopefully, if you're not using all of them, which probably none of us will, although I tried to use all of them today, you'll get some ideas on maybe some that you haven't been using. And what's cool about this is also going to turn out to be our agenda. So Elizabeth, do you want to kind of clear this so we can move on?
Right, Susan's going to clear it, but so you weren't putting stars on the rest of the, or hearts or checks or X's. What I want you to do is go back up to the, where you found stamp, go over to the left to the red X and click on that red X. So you're no longer putting your mark on any of the slides. And we thank you for that going forward.
Not doing that.
All right, so as I said, here's our agenda. And don't you love it that we've already covered 2 of the points, repetition of key points and encouraging note-taking and writing in the chat. And I just wanted to point out to you that on page 3 of your handout, all of these tools are listed and there's a place for your notes beside them. So hopefully you can make use of that. So here is the first tool that we're going to look at. And as far as I'm concerned, this is the most important one. And here's the headline: less is more. In fact, I'm going to bump up that headline and I'm going to say less is much more. And it's because our brains only have room, they can only handle so much new content. So if that's the case, you want to be very selective about what you present and what you repeat. It's crucial for you to figure out what key points you want people to leave the webinar with. And honestly, these days, I'm finding that maybe 2 or 3 key points is a lot, and I'm kind of happy with that. And we all know this can be very challenging to be this selective about the content because we always have more content than people have room for in their brain. So my recommendation is to be a cherry picker about the best content. And what this often requires is to put the content on a diet. We've found that it helps to think about the content you're presenting like an elegant special occasion meal, where people walk away happily sated and talking about what a great experience it was, as opposed to making the experience like a big buffet table that's overloaded with food, which causes us to overeat, bloat up the content, and frankly, have regrets later. So that's the trade-off. You really want to be very selective. But what that often involves is saying no. Now, if you're the presenter, you have to say no to yourself. If someone else is the presenter, you have to say no to them. And that can be pretty difficult. Here's what I have found is one of the most challenging things. I find that public enemy number 1, when it comes to saying no to content, is when the presenter, again, whether it's you or someone else, has a set of slides that they previously used. We're always looking for shortcuts, and a set of already existing slides, let's face it, is very seductive. You know, how many times does somebody ask us to do something, we say, oh, great, I already have a set of slides. But inevitably, what I have found is that those slides tend to be off target and will bloat the presentation and take you away from the key points that you want to make for your audience. So my recommendation is do your audience and yourself a favor and be wary of previously used slide decks. So just to go back to repetition, the key point here is less is much more when it comes to content. Be very selective. So now let's assume that you have been very selective about your content. Somebody has on their, they're putting X's. We just need you to, there you go. So once you have that content, what you want to do is look to start off with something positive. That's what we were doing with the Mark Bezos video. And in her book, Positivity by Barbara Fredrickson, who is a social psychologist at the University of North Carolina, she describes her research on the important impact of being positive. She explains that being positive, as you can see here, makes us much more receptive, creative, and resilient. And these are three things that at least give us a running start at getting our audience's attention to start the process of getting what we're presenting into their long-term memories. Now, one way that I sometimes start a workshop is while people are waiting, I'll have them write something positive that's going on for them. Or if it's a small group, when we do the introductions, I ask people to say one thing that's going well for them. But this can be kind of hit or miss. So you need to follow that up with something else that is a direct hit. And that was why we did the Mark Bezos video, because we wanted everybody to experience, hopefully everybody experienced that as somewhat positive. So think about what you can do to intentionally kick off your webinars on a positive note for everyone. And what you choose to do for that positive kickoff should also be designed to get immediately into one or more of the main points that you want people to walk away with. So we know that one excellent way to do that, which we've all experienced, is to tell a story. So we saw the power of story. And here are a few things, though, to consider about a story. Not all stories are created equal. And you can bet that Mark Bezos practiced that story for hours to make it tight and engaging. So if you're going to tell a story, or if one of your presenters is, really make sure that it is as tight as it can be. I have found the following format to be very useful in helping people to kind of come up with this tight story. So let me just walk you through how this works using Mark. So who's the story about? It was about Mark. What did Mark want to accomplish? He wanted to be a hero. What were the obstacles for Mark? Lex Luthor, or the other guy, got there ahead of him and was asked to rescue the dog. What did Mark do to overcome the obstacles? He hung in there and he went in and did what he was told and rescued the shoes. And as he said, what's the moral of the story? Is that there's more than one way to be a hero. So it's a pretty simple format, but it does help people to be, tighten up their stories. Now, here's one other thing, though, about a story. Often we feel that it's not as hardcore and convincing as presenting data. But research shows that data doesn't usually last in our working or short-term memories, and as such is unlikely to make it into our long-term memories, which is, of course, our goal. So in the battle for brain space, data just doesn't have the staying power of a story. Think about your own immunity at this point to the daily numbers on COVID. We've been drowning in data to the point where a lot of us are kind of desensitized to it. It's not easy to comprehend 1,400 people dying. What we can comprehend and what moves us is our neighbor's brother who is struggling to stay alive in the ICU. So we need faces to go with the data, and stories can do that for us. So we just finished saying that data doesn't do it in most cases when it comes to long-term memory. One exception to that is data that surprises us. So recently, Doug Dixon used this slide in a presentation. And this slide, what Doug had to say about it, was a surprise to many of the people in the audience, including me. The slide and data show that there are now more people over 50 starting new businesses than any other age group. And they're not just starting more businesses, they're more successful at it. Someone over 50 is 2 times more likely to make their new business work than someone around the age of 30. And then there are people who are over 60 and their odds are even higher, 3 times higher. So what did this data do? This data got the audience's attention. It piqued their curiosity, and the ensuing discussion got people thinking and involved. Doug surprised us with that data, which the authors of this book, Tanya Luna and Leanne Reninger, the name of the book is Surprise, Embrace the Unpredictable and Engineer the Unexpected. This is what you can do with a surprise. You can get people's attention and you can get them curious and thinking. And again, these are 2 things that are crucial in the battle for brain space. With this slide, Doug got people curious about why older people may have more success, and that meant that he held our attention a bit longer, and then they were asking themselves, why might that be? So they hung in there to get the answers. Again, getting and keeping people's attention. So the tip here is a simple one. Use data to startle or surprise people to get their attention. But don't depend on data to keep people's attention. Look for other ways to do that. Another technique that gets people's attention and gets them involved is to use a survey or a poll, which you did earlier. Now, I often use a survey or a poll to convey the information that I have cherry-picked and want people to have. So I asked you to look at these and, which ones did you make a conscious effort to use? What that required was for you to read down the list and to think about each of these, which of these do I use? I could have asked people to identify, which of these do you enjoy experiencing when you're in a webinar, or any number of things. The benefit of asking people to do something with the items in your survey or your poll is that it gives them a chance to think about it and personalize it. So for example, if you presented a bunch of data to people, you might ask them, what surprises you about any of this? Or what matters to you about any of this? Again, it gives people a chance to absorb it, which you're reading it to them aloud really doesn't do. So surveys are often a very quick and dirty way to present information that you want people to have and relate to. Another way to help people relate to your content is by using metaphors. And I think you can already tell that I am a big fan of metaphors. I'm always looking for ways to connect what we're talking about to something that people can easily relate to and remember. So I don't know, how memorable the heart and brain surgeon is for you, or being a cherry picker, or thinking about your content and being as selective as you would be at an elegant meal, or putting your content on a diet. My thing is, I try a bunch of different things, and my hope is that something is going to connect and be memorable. As you can see, one of the really nice things about using a metaphor is that it lends itself beautifully to pictures. And let's talk a little bit about pictures. If you can, you want slides with more pictures than words. And here's why. It's all about our brains. Our brains can look and listen, or they can read. But you know what? They can't do both. They can't look and listen and read. So the most brain-friendly approach is to use pictures and then explain orally what you mean, rather than expecting people to read to listen and read what's on your slide at the same time. Now, you can ask people to do some silent reading, right? But that's not particularly engaging. And as we know, engaging people is crucial to keeping their attention and then getting them to take action on what they've heard. One of the best ways to do that is to ask people to immediately apply the key points that have been made. And so we're going to do that right now. We're going to give you a chance to think about some of these brain-friendly techniques and which of them you might want to use in a webinar. Maybe you have one that's coming up, or maybe you have one like me that you wish you could do a do-over on. So we're going to use the breakout rooms to do that. And our friend Susan is going to help us with that in just a minute. But first, I want to walk you through what you're going to do in the breakouts. So if everybody would go to page 4 in your handouts.
Uh-oh, I
Okay.
don't know what I did with it.
All right. And just keep yourself muted if you can. That would be great. All right. So if you didn't print these out, you're going to be in a breakout room with 2 or 3 other people. So hopefully one of them will have it, or you can kind of take notes as I walk you through what's going to happen. So you're going to be in the breakout room. Ideally, we're going to have 3 people in a breakout, but things being the way they are sometimes, you might find yourself in there with just one other person, or you might be in there with 3 other people. When you get in there, briefly, and I can't emphasize that enough, introduce yourselves, your name, where you're located, and if appropriate, your organization. Take about 2 minutes max for all of you to do that. Then ask someone to be a timekeeper, and who will give each person about equal time. So if you're in a group of 3, each person's going to get about 6 minutes. If you're in a group of 2, you're going to get 10 minutes each. And if you're in a group of 4, you probably get about 5 minutes each. Okay. And what you're going to do, then decide who's going to go first. When it's your turn, ask the timekeeper to set the time for the appropriate time, and then briefly describe the webinar that you're thinking about doing. Or as I said, maybe there's one from your past that you want to redo. And then choose a couple of the techniques that you see listed here under item number 2 on page 4 that you're thinking about using in your webinar, and how you might use them and what value that you think they might have. While you're doing that describing, your partners are basically going to be listening to you. So maybe figure, you're going to take about 4 minutes to talk about that. And your partners have been listening and not talking, and then they can jump in. And then when the 6 minutes are up, you're going to go on to the next person. So you're going to have about 20 or so minutes in the breakout room. And I strongly encourage you to go to the breakouts. And that's for two reasons. One, in my experience, most people say that was the most valuable part of the workshop. And two, your partners are waiting for you. So this is an opportunity to help each other, to think through what you can do to make a greater impact on your webinars. So what questions does anybody have? You can just unmute yourself and call out if you're good. All right. So Susan, do you want to spring everybody into their breakout rooms? That would be great.
Just make sure when the message pops up on the screen that you choose accept to be put into the room.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so you can see my question. How was that? Who wants to unmute yourself and just tell us what that was like? Or put it in the chat, whatever you want to do.
So I'll just say that was amazing. I was in a group with Glenn and Ellie who helped me with a really thorny challenge that I have of doing a 30-minute recorded webinar. And I feel like I've got the webinar stuff generally down because I do it every day. But the idea of doing something recorded and trying to build in interactive was challenging, and they gave me great ideas. So thank you.
Aren't you lucky? That is terrific. Good. Who else?
We have being able to think out loud, very helpful.
Okay, good, good. Anything else?
Yes, I want to thank Doug Dixon and Denise Raposa. I hugged most of the time, but I let them go first, talking about an upcoming graduation celebration for the mentoring program I lead, which in the past I would say has been anywhere from boring to extremely boring, with a few amazing high points. So I feel much better equipped to liven it up a little bit with referring back to themes and techniques from today's session. So thank you both.
That's great. Who else? Anyone else?
Tim mentioned being more selective about content is a good thing, and starting with the positive, telling a story and more pictures than words. So those seem to talk to him.
Right. And that's the hardest thing, that is being selective about the content. And I just want to say, we had a question about that, and we are going to do questions and answers later, but, or somebody made a comment, and I'm not sure if it was Betsy, who said, it's very hard to say no when you're working with a committee. And I just want to mention a couple of things that we've done with Encore Boston. Sometimes when we have a panel or a group of people, Doug will say to me, you be the person who, sort of corrals everybody and gets them to, kind of refine their content. So I end up being not so much the bad guy, but sort of the person who says, here's the amount of time we have, here's what we can do. And the thing is, I'm not usually presenting any content. I'm just helping them to cut down on what they have. I sometimes also say to people, every slide is at most 2 minutes. And so you have 10 minutes. You figure out what your 5 slides are. And that helps tremendously. And then recently, I observed a panel that I had nothing to do with, where the moderator had everybody use a timer in their home office, and they set the timer for the amount of time that they had. So these are all the things that, it's just sometimes by being too nice, you're actually defeating the purpose of the webinar. And, just anyway, I just wanted to kind of mention those tips because I know we all struggle with being the person that says no. All right, so we're ready to move on. And if I can get my slides to cooperate, we can. There we go. All right. So the good news is we are just about at the end. And the next thing we're going to do, and I think this is one of the most important, is pushing people to identify their next steps and publicly commit to them. So if everybody would turn, I don't know if everyone has this, but I hope most of you have the handouts. Turn to page 5. There we go. And this is called Confidence in Your Next Steps. And the reason that I do a confidence check-in is this. Of all the factors that impact people's using what they learn in a webinar or workshop, their confidence level is the most important. And if you think about it, if people don't feel confident to try something, they aren't going to do it. So I like to do a little bit of a check-in. And even if you don't have the handout, you can answer this question for yourself. On a scale from 1 to 10, how confident are you feeling at this moment in your ability to design a brain-friendly webinar that will move people to action? And then what can you do to bump that up by 1 or 2 points? And maybe that is, if you're thinking about doing a story, maybe it's practicing that story, or it's picking one tool to try out and sort of do what happened in the breakout room, which seemed like it had great results for people, just sort of convening a couple of other people and saying, here's what I need to do. I have 30 minutes. I have the content, but how do I make it interactive? So utilize your team and your support team. The last thing that I want you to do is I want you, if you look on this page, you can see it says, what is one ridiculously small step that you can take in the next 24 to 48 hours? And here's why that is there. Often at the end of a webinar, the audience is asked to identify a goal that they want to accomplish. But here's the truth about setting biggish goals. They tend to shut down our brains because they overwhelm our brains, and lots of times we end up doing nothing. Think about your New Year's resolutions. It just puts us on overload. So what we're going to suggest instead is that you give yourselves a boost and a break by identifying a small step you can do to get started on utilizing these brain-friendly techniques. I consider myself the queen of small steps. And the reason is that a small step produces dopamine in the brain, which is a chemical that energizes us to take action. I always think about the first 2 letters of dopamine, D-O. To me, it's the do chemical. So just a small step can do that. And we actually take this a little bit one step further, or I like to take it one step further. And I like to ask people to identify ridiculously small step. So what's a ridiculously small step? It's something that is so small that you can't help but do it. So, in this case, it might be starting to think about a story that you might tell, or sending an email to somebody and saying, what do you think about this? Or maybe you want to scan your notes in from today into your computer, or write a post-it with one idea that you got from this webinar that you want to remember. I do a ridiculously small step every night, which I'm going to share with you, which is I put my socks in my sneakers, and I put the sneakers on my dresser so I can't miss them in the morning, and I get myself one step closer to taking a walk. So that's my ridiculously small step. So here's what I'd like you to do. Complete page 5 and then put your ridiculously small step into the chat. And let's do a little bit of a contest. Who has the most ridiculously small step that you're planning on taking?
Yeah, I just lost my connection, so let me get back in here.
I hear you.
Yeah, I just came back, but I just went out and then came
Oh,
back.
okay.
Anyway.
So we already have somebody, Carrie already put
You know
her
how it is.
ridiculously small step in. Be more succinct. I love it. All right, I'm just going to shut up and give people a chance to write.
Smile. Smile's making it big.
They do.
Starting with the title slide, which leads to others. Yeah, boy, I get that. Share ideas. Find a source for more images, which was a question we'll come back to.
Yeah.
Word clouds. Be more succinct storyteller. Get comfortable with surveys.
All right, Janine, you
Image.
put yourself on a diet here with no more than 10 slides. Cool. All right, now all of a sudden, okay. All right, I think people have made wonderful progress. And, you know, I always see that, you know, one of the reasons that the ridiculously small step is so great is that it does make other people smile. And if you coach other people, when you ask them to come up with a ridiculously small step, it just sort of, I don't know, puts them at ease, and the humor is really helpful. So I highly recommend it, and think about, you know, what your ridiculously small steps can be. I kind of go through my whole life making ridiculously small steps. Okay, so we are in good shape, and we have kind of one more thing to do, which there we go. So use the peak end rule. And what is that? That is just what it says. Start strong. That was my intention with the Mark video, and end strong. And so let's do a little bit. I'm not sure this is the most powerful ending, but here's what I'd like you to do. I want you to write your key takeaway in all caps in the chat and in your notes. And we're doing this for 2 reasons. One, so that we can use the chat as a wonderful review for everyone. And also so that you have the notes for yourself when you go. So just what was your key takeaway from today? Just kind of help us with that. Put your content on a diet. I know that's my favorite too. RSS, that's my other favorite. Those are 2 of my favorites. Using annotation, yes, that's a great tool. And I will say, while people are writing, that I do that because I have found the Zoom polls to be a bit unreliable. And so I just feel that people love that annotate tool. It gives them a chance to do something. And then I don't have to worry if the Zoom poll is functioning. So metaphors, pictures worth 1,000 words, repetition, you guys are great. This is a great review. And we're going to suggest at the very end that you save the chat, and then you can have kind of your own review of this in addition to the recording. All right, so I think that we are very good at this moment. And I am going to turn it over to Susan, right? Susan, you want it, right?
Are you going to do Q&A first?
Yes, I am going to do. Thank you. There's what happened to my brain. Thank you. All right. So everybody just kind of unmute yourself or put questions in the chat. Or Elizabeth, what is have we gotten anything?
We've got two in there from our friend from Canada, Helen
Okay.
Hirsch Spence. One of them is, in keeping with your assertion that one can't look, listen, and read, I am curious to see that you encourage writing and reading in the chat. Can you explain?
I do, because usually what's happening is that's just another way of engaging people. And if people take the time to write something in the chat, then I know they're involved. And you know, I don't try and read what's in the chat, and that's why we had Elizabeth monitoring it. So is it a perfect solution? No, but I've been on some webinars where you can't use the chat, and you know, it's kind of annoying. So I don't know. That was just, I don't know if anyone else has a thought on it.
I'm going to add to that, and that's that I don't know that you really used it for people. I mean, they could do it anytime, but when you used it was really intentionally,
Yeah.
you know, put it in the chat, you know, and
Yeah, that's different. I didn't mean that.
yeah,
That makes sense. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I find chat really distracting
Me too.
because I constantly see the number, and even if I don't click on to read it, it then feels compelling, like, oh, I need to see what this person wrote. So to me, it feels like being in the audience, and as the presenter is speaking, people are just interrupting with comments.
Yeah.
I like the intentional use of chat where you say, now can people go in the chat and do this? But the more I've been doing Zoom, I've found that people are it just feels like interruption all the time.
Yeah, I think you just, you know, for me, it works okay. And I am trying to use it intentionally. But if you find it distracting, then you can set up I think you can set up your session that the chat isn't used. And so that would help.
I find it not as a presenter, the chat doesn't distract me as a presenter. As an audience person, it totally distracts.
Yeah. So you know what to do? Take a little sticky and put it on the bottom of your screen.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And then you can't see it.
Yeah.
That's what I do. Okay.
I suffer from FOMO. I'm afraid I'm missing something too
There you
terrific,
go.
you know?
Here's the beauty of it. You can save the chat at the end. So you
I
never
know.
really lose
That's a good
anything,
idea.
right? Yeah. Okay, good. What other questions? You said there were a couple, Elizabeth?
Well, Helen, you want to ask your other one?
I just, you know, I love the images that you used, Amy, and I just want to know where you sourced them.
You know what I did, and I hope I'm not going to be taken away to, like, you know, jail or something, but I use Bing.com, and you go to Bing.com, and then when you open it, there's a thing that just says images, and I put what I'm looking for in there, and it comes up with these great images. So that's what I've been using. Before, I used to do a whole bunch of other stuff. And I just found that almost everything I needed was in there. Like the slide you're looking at now, long-term memory. I put it in there and I got this brain head. And then I don't know, I superimposed a box over it to cover what it really said. And I wrote long-term memory in it. So I just tried Bing.com. It's Microsoft, you know, but that's what's working for me right now.
Thank you. I never have gone there. So, and they're free, or you don't know?
I think, you know, the way I got to it was I wrote free clip art.
Okay.
And so that's what came up. But that's why, you know, it's like buyer beware. So
You can use the same approach with any other search engine. So
yeah.
Google Chrome works, and all of the others as well.
Yeah. I've just had really good luck lately, Doug, with this Bing.com. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Anything else? Oh, somebody says, I use nounproject.com and Google Images. Great. Okay. Any other suggestions?
Yeah, I just went to Bing.com. Google used to do this. You could search by images. You could
Yes.
sort it by license. You can do that in Bing.com. So there's a filter and you can filter for free images in that.
Okay, that's good to know. Maybe that'll keep me out of prison. Thank you. What else? What other questions does anybody have?
The Canvas suggestion is a good one because you can also create memes and so on by combining words and images.
Okay, good. That's great. That's great. Other suggestions of things that you've found that work?
I was on a webinar where there was a sort of group generated word cloud. And so that was fun and engaging. And there's certainly free software to do that. So that's a different way to get a sense of what people are thinking or how they're feeling.
Okay, good, good.
I'll
So
see
the
if I can
word
find it
cloud
and
thing-
put that in the chat.
Yeah, so the word cloud, what do you do with that? Whoever put that in there?
So for instance, again, the program I'm thinking about is this graduation celebration. So, it's, I don't know if you could say one word about the mentoring program, its impact on you.
Okay.
So
What you do is, if in word cloud, I use them to design in my first image for my classes, and I use the terms that are most important, and the more the terms come up, the bigger they can get in the word cloud. So
Right.
different ones come up with different sizes, and it's a really good, I use it as kind of a precursor to, these are the terms you're going to learn this term, in this class. And they're free. I just do you can save, simple ones are free, save them to a PDF, and then you've got them.
That sounds great. Good.
Yeah.
Good. All right. And Pam put in a bunch of sites for us. So I would encourage everybody, I hope everyone knows how to save the chat. You just click on the three buttons in the lower right of your chat and you can save it. And it should show up in a file under Zoom. And Betsy has also given us a bunch of great things.
Yeah, we'll send the chat with the link to the recording.
That sounds good.
It
Thanks.
looks like Carrie has raised her hand. Good for you, Carrie. Raised your hand. I don't even know where that is in Zoom. You want to
All
ask
right.
your
So
question?
Carrie, what's your question?
Well, I just learned this recently. It's under reactions. So
Yeah.
not the place where you might expect it, but if you click on that, you can raise your hand. I just wanted to, so two things. You asked if there are things that we've done in webinars that have worked particularly well. And so I help long distance grandparents stay connected to their grandchildren. And I actually do a demonstration portion in the webinar that grandparents really love. So it could be like a show and tell, and actually showing someone how the techniques that you're teaching in the webinar work. And I don't know, I mean, I use like a red pepper and just funny little props, but that's worked really well. And then the second thing is that I wondered, and I know Janine has left now, but I was curious about what her group came up with for how to make a pre-recorded webinar more interactive. She said that she learned some things. So if members of her group are still here and or, Amy or whoever wants to kind of give us some tips on pre-recorded webinars and how to make them more interactive.
So whoever was in
so
the
much.
group.
Was Greg?
Carrie, I was in that group. So just some of our commentary was along the lines of all well and good to rehearse, but you don't want to have a kind of a canned performance, very open, really have your content down really very nicely, just like the video we watched beforehand. Yeah, and some of the ideas were to get materials in advance to the audience so they can read and think about it if at all possible. Maybe the only mechanism to do that is in the description itself, but definitely a rehearsed sort of thing, get a trial group.
We also talked about inserting something like a survey type of a place for people to stop and think or stop and reflect, even if you aren't able to use it right away, but just even in that kind of a situation, so it isn't a talking head, so you can have something like give them space to do something, and whether they fill something out or whether they just that absorption time, even in a canned or whatever rehearsed speech.
Great, good.
In the category of extremely small suggestions, I reflected on an idea I got from a 5th grader, literally. He's very good on Zoom because he cut out a little smiley face and put it next to the camera. And it just continual reminder to smile.
That's
And
good.
apparently pretty effective. I do that.
Good. Great. And I just want to do a shout out to Glenn Frank, who brought up Amy Cuddy. I think a lot of people know about her power poses. Think Wonder Woman standing with the arms outstretched. This is a great thing to do for you as a presenter before you start your Zoom thing. And sometimes I ask my audience to do that while we're going. It's just sort of a good energy thing. So
yeah, I've done that for all my presentations. In fact, I've there's a bunch of 3rd graders. One of my teachers is in my class, and now at the beginning of every class, she has her whole class get up and we throw a smile on it. Think about Patrick, the quintessential smiling starfish, SpongeBob SquarePants' best friend, and a big smile on top of the stretch. And I'll go on here, but a really nice
that's great.
way to warm up the crowd.
All right, that's good. I will mention that to Amy Cuddy. I have seen her a couple of times. She lives in the neighborhood where I live.
Cool.
So I'm going to pass that on. All right, I think we're wrapped on my side. So Susan, do you want to?
Yeah, well, first I want to thank Amy and Elizabeth, because that was fantastic. And you held the audience the whole time. So that's pretty impressive.
Good.
I would like to shout out to say, if any of you have an expertise or something you think other members in the network would enjoy learning about, let us know, because having our members who have such diverse experience, expertise, do presentations like this and do events is our strongest commercial for joining the network. It's why we're here, to connect you, to discover from each other, and to build a diverse membership, which is really our goal. So if you have an idea, send it to us at info@. We'll make sure it gets to Doug and his program committee, and we'd love to hear that. We do hope you'll provide some feedback in the chat again on today's presentation, and also to remind you that there's another event next Wednesday. It's a coffee chat with Cullen Hayashida, and it's about, he's providing some information on pre-retirement workshops. So that may be something you're interested in for your audiences and your constituencies. We also have a racial justice affinity group meeting on May 27th, and the next 50+ employment group meets on June 2nd. So check the website, register there. We'll make sure you get the Zoom link. So one last thing, you have peers in the industry who are not yet members of the Encore Network. Please tell them about this and why it's so important for us to connect with each other and learn from each other and figure out the way we can most impact people in this stage of life. And with that, I'll say thank you. Thank you for showing up and participating. This was a really good participatory group. Again, thank you, Amy and Elizabeth, and have an awesome rest of the day.
You too.
Hi, everybody.